More than a decade later, Price found himself entangled in a mystery that defied rational explanation. In 1936, the esteemed paranormal investigator was drawn to a case that had baffled even the most skeptical minds. This was not his first foray into the supernatural, but it was one that would haunt him for years to come. Raynham Hall, a grand estate nestled in the rolling hills of Norfolk, was the site of his investigation. Its majestic facade belied the dark secrets it harbored within. Built in the early 18th century, the hall had seen generations come and go, and with them, whispers of restless spirits. Two employees of Country Life magazine, Captain Hubert Provence and his assistant Indra Shira, were sent to capture the architectural beauty of the hall for an upcoming feature. They arrived on a crisp autumn morning, the air thick with the scent of decaying leaves. The grand staircase, with its ornate banister and time-worn steps, stood as a testament to the hall's storied past. As they set up their equipment at the foot of the stairs, Shira's attention was drawn to an odd sensation, a chill that seemed to creep into her bones despite the warmth of the day. Her eyes widened as she saw a faint, vaporous shape at the top of the stairs. "Hubert," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Look." Provence turned just in time to see the misty form slowly coalesce into the shape of a woman. She was dressed in the flowing garments of an earlier era, her face obscured by an ethereal veil. The ghostly figure seemed to glide down the staircase, each step echoing with a ghostly silence that set their hearts racing. In a flurry of motion, Provence and Shira grabbed their cameras, the mechanical clicks of their shutters capturing the apparition's descent. The figure paused halfway down, her translucent hand resting lightly on the banister as if contemplating her next move. The air around them grew colder, and an oppressive silence fell over the hall. Provence, his hands shaking, managed to take one final shot before the figure dissolved into the air, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. They developed the photographs later that night in their makeshift darkroom. Each print revealed the same spectral image: a woman in white, her face hidden in shadow, descending the staircase. The next day, Price arrived at Raynham Hall, drawn by the urgency in Provence's voice over the phone. As he examined the photographs, a sense of foreboding washed over him. These images were unlike any he had seen before, imbued with a palpable malevolence. Price knew he had to delve deeper into the history of Raynham Hall to uncover the identity of this ghostly woman and the reason for her unrest. He spent hours in the dusty archives of the local library, piecing together fragments of the estate's past. What he discovered sent a shiver down his spine. In the early 1800s, a woman named Lady Eleanor had lived in Raynham Hall. She was known for her beauty and grace, but also for the tragic circumstances of her death. Rumors whispered of betrayal and heartbreak, of a love turned sour and a life ended too soon. Her spirit, it seemed, had never found peace. As Price prepared to spend the night at Raynham Hall, hoping to communicate with Lady Eleanor's ghost, the atmosphere grew tense. The shadows lengthened, and the hall's ancient walls seemed to close in around him. He set up his equipment, his heart pounding in anticipation. And then, as midnight approached, he heard it, the faint sound of footsteps on the staircase, growing louder with each passing second. The sound of footsteps on the staircase grew louder, echoing through the cavernous hall like a relentless drumbeat. Price, every nerve taut with anticipation, stood at the foot of the stairs, his eyes straining to pierce the thickening gloom. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and the ancient timbers of Raynham Hall seemed to groan under the weight of unseen burdens. Price held his breath as a faint, ghostly glow began to materialize at the top of the stairs. The form was unmistakable, the same vaporous shape of a woman that Provence and Shira had captured in their photographs. Her outline grew clearer, the flowing garments of an earlier era shimmering with an otherworldly light. "Lady Eleanor," Price called out, his voice barely a whisper. The figure paused, as if acknowledging his presence. She began her descent once more, each step deliberate, as if she were reliving a journey she had made countless times before. As she neared the halfway point, where Provence and Shira had seen her the previous day, Lady Eleanor's translucent hand reached out to the banister. Her face, still veiled in shadow, turned slowly towards Price. He could feel her eyes, cold and ancient, boring into him. "Why do you haunt this place?" Price asked, his voice steadier now. "What keeps you here?" For a moment, The ghostly figure seemed to waver, as if caught between the realms of the living and the dead. Then, she raised her other hand and pointed towards a door at the far end of the hall, one that Price had not noticed before. The door was old, its wood darkened with age, and it seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Price knew he had to see what lay beyond that door. He gathered his courage and took a step forward, but as he did, Lady Eleanor's form began to dissolve into the air, leaving behind a chill that seeped into his very bones. The footsteps ceased, and the hall was plunged into an eerie silence once more. The door loomed before him, an ominous sentinel guarding the secrets of Raynham Hall. Price reached out, his hand trembling, and turned the ancient brass knob. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. A faint, musty smell wafted up from below, mingling with the scent of damp earth and decay. Armed with a flashlight, Price descended the steps, each creak and groan of the wood underfoot amplifying the sense of dread that gnawed at his insides. At the bottom of the stairs, he found himself in a small, dimly lit cellar. The walls were lined with dusty shelves, cluttered with old bottles and forgotten relics. In the center of the room stood a wooden table, its surface scarred and stained with age. On the table lay a large, leather-bound book, its cover adorned with strange symbols that seemed to writhe and twist in the dim light. Price felt a compulsion to open the book, to uncover the secrets it held. As he reached out to touch the cover, a sudden cold breeze swept through the cellar, extinguishing his flashlight and plunging him into darkness. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain calm. He fumbled for his matches and lit a small candle he found on one of the shelves. The flickering light cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the symbols on the book appear even more sinister. Price opened the book and began to read. The pages were filled with accounts of dark rituals and ancient curses, tales of betrayal and revenge that spanned centuries. And there, in the final pages, he found the story of Lady Eleanor. She had been a woman of great beauty and grace, but also of great sorrow. Betrayed by the man she loved, she had taken her own life in a fit of despair, cursing him and all who would come to Raynham Hall after him. As Price read the final words of the tale, he felt a presence behind him. He turned slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. Standing there, her face now fully visible, was Lady Eleanor. Her eyes were dark pools of sorrow and rage, her mouth twisted in a grimace of pain. "You should not have come here," she whispered, her voice a haunting melody of despair. "You have awakened the darkness." Price backed away, the book clutched in his hands. "What can I do to help you find peace?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Lady Eleanor's eyes seemed to soften for a moment, and she pointed to a spot on the floor near the table. Price noticed a loose stone, partially hidden by dust and debris. He knelt and pried it up, revealing a small, ornate box buried beneath the floor. The box was locked, but Lady Eleanor's ghostly hand passed through it, and it sprang open. Inside, Price found a locket and a letter, both belonging to Lady Eleanor. The letter was a heartfelt plea for forgiveness, written to the man who had betrayed her. It spoke of love, sorrow, and a desire for reconciliation even in death. With trembling hands, Price read the letter aloud. As he did, Lady Eleanor's form began to glow with a warm, golden light. The shadows lifted from her face, revealing a look of profound relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice fading. "You have set me free." Price watched in awe as Lady Eleanor's spirit dissolved into the light, leaving the cellar bathed in a peaceful glow. The oppressive weight lifted from the air, and a sense of calm settled over Raynham Hall. But as Price prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness she spoke of was not entirely gone. The symbols in the book, the ominous energy of the door, and the lingering chill in the cellar all hinted at a deeper, more insidious presence that still lurked within the hall's ancient walls. With Lady Eleanor's spirit at rest, Price knew his work was far from over. Raynham Hall held more secrets, and he was determined to uncover them. The haunting was not over, it had only just begun. Price returned to the ground floor of Raynham Hall, the weight of Lady Eleanor's story still pressing heavily on his mind. The house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its oppressive atmosphere lightened by the release of her tormented spirit. But the symbols in the ancient book, the malevolent energy from the door, and the lingering chill in the cellar whispered of darker forces still at play. Determined to uncover the remaining secrets of the hall, Price decided to stay the night. He set up his equipment once more, this time in the library, a grand room filled with dusty tomes and antique furniture. He pored over the book he had found in the cellar, trying to decipher the strange symbols and understand the rituals described within its pages. As the night wore on, the temperature in the library began to drop. Price's breath fogged in the air, and the shadows seemed to grow deeper and more menacing. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, as if unseen eyes were watching him. Suddenly, the candle flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Price fumbled for his flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. Panic clawed at his mind, but he forced himself to remain calm. He remembered the matches and candle he had found in the cellar and managed to light another one. The flickering flame cast eerie shadows on the walls, and Price realized he was no longer alone. In the corner of the library, a figure began to take shape. It was a man, tall and gaunt, his face twisted in a mask of anger and pain. Price recognized him from the portraits that lined the halls of Raynham. Sir Edward, the man who had betrayed Lady Eleanor. "Who are you?" Price demanded, though he already knew the answer. "What do you want?" Sir Edward's spirit stepped forward, his eyes burning with a cold, vengeful light. "You have freed her," he hissed, "but you have not freed me." Price felt a chill run down his spine. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sir Edward's ghostly form seemed to waver, as if struggling against an unseen force. "Find the truth," he said. "Uncover the secrets buried within these walls. Only then can you hope to free us all." With those words, Sir Edward's spirit vanished, leaving Price alone in the flickering candlelight. The sense of dread returned, stronger than before. He knew he had to dig deeper into the history of Raynham Hall to uncover the dark truths that had bound these spirits to the earthly realm. Price spent the following days in feverish research, poring over old documents, diaries, and letters he found in the library. He discovered a hidden compartment in one of the bookshelves, containing a bundle of letters written by Sir Edward himself. They told a tale of forbidden love and jealousy, of dark rituals performed in the dead of night to gain power and control. The letters hinted at a hidden room within Raynham Hall, a place where Sir Edward had conducted his rituals. Price searched the hall meticulously, looking for any clues that might lead him to this secret chamber. His efforts were finally rewarded when he found a concealed door behind a tapestry in the drawing room. The door led to a narrow, winding staircase that descended deep into the earth. The air grew colder and more oppressive as Price ventured further down, the darkness seeming to close in around him. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a heavy wooden door, its surface covered in the same strange symbols he had seen in the book. With a sense of foreboding, Price pushed the door open and stepped into the hidden chamber. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering candle on an ancient altar. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old tomes, jars of strange substances, and artifacts that seemed to hum with a dark energy. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, lay a large, ornate mirror. Its surface was black and reflective, and Price felt a strange compulsion to look into it. As he approached the mirror, he saw his own reflection twist and warp, transforming into the face of Sir Edward. "You have found it," Sir Edward's voice echoed in the chamber. "The mirror is the key. It holds the power of the rituals, the source of my torment." Price understood. The mirror was the focal point of Sir Edward's dark magic, the object that bound his spirit to this world. But how could he use it to free him? He studied the symbols around the room, trying to piece together the ritual that would break the curse. As he worked, he felt a presence growing stronger behind him. He turned to see Lady Eleanor's spirit, now serene and peaceful, standing beside Sir Edward. They both watched him with eyes filled with hope and anticipation. Price knew he had to get this right. He carefully followed the instructions he had deciphered, drawing a circle around the mirror with a chalky substance from one of the jars. He placed the locket and the letter from the box in the center of the circle and began to chant the words from the ancient book. The air grew thick with energy, and the symbols around the room began to glow. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and Price felt a surge of power course through him. Sir Edward's spirit stepped forward, his face filled with a mix of fear and hope. With a final, resonant chant, Price completed the ritual. The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, and a blinding light filled the chamber. When the light faded, both Sir Edward and Lady Eleanor's spirits were gone, and the oppressive energy that had haunted Raynham Hall lifted. Price felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. The spirits were free, their torment ended. But as he left the hidden chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered in the shadows of Raynham Hall. The ancient house had given up many of its secrets, but it still held more, waiting to be discovered. As Price prepared to leave Raynham Hall, a cold breeze swept through the hallways, and he heard a faint whisper in the air. "Beware the darkness that remains." He knew his work was not yet done. The darkness within Raynham Hall was vast and ancient, and it would take more than a single investigation to uncover all its mysteries. Price vowed to return, to continue his quest to unravel the dark secrets of Raynham Hall. The haunting was far from over, and the echoes of its past would continue to call out to him, drawing him back to the place where shadows and spirits danced in the gloom. Determined to uncover every secret of Raynham Hall, Price returned to the estate countless times over the next year. The hall's shadows grew familiar to him, each whisper and creak a part of the place's sinister symphony. He delved deeper into the history, discovering more about the dark rituals performed by Sir Edward and others who had lived there. Yet, with every new revelation, the sense of foreboding only grew stronger. One stormy night, as lightning split the sky and thunder rumbled ominously, Price found himself drawn back to the hidden chamber. The broken mirror had been removed, but the room still thrummed with a dark energy. On the altar lay a book he had never seen before, its pages filled with symbols and incantations even more arcane than those he had previously encountered. Compelled by a force he couldn't understand, Price began to read the book. The words seemed to dance on the page, pulling him deeper into their dark magic. As he chanted the ancient incantations, the air grew thick with a malevolent presence. The candles flickered and died, plunging the chamber into darkness. A chill ran down Price's spine as he felt a cold hand grip his shoulder. He turned to find Sir Edward and Lady Eleanor standing before him, their faces twisted in agony. But there was something different about them now. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their forms seemed more solid, more menacing. "You should have left well enough alone," Sir Edward whispered, his voice a rasping echo of his former self. "You have awakened the true darkness of Raynham Hall." Price tried to back away, but he found himself unable to move. The air around him seemed to solidify, trapping him in place. He realized, with a dawning horror, that he had been tricked. The rituals he had performed, the secrets he had uncovered, had not freed the spirits. They had only strengthened the dark forces that bound them. Lady Eleanor's face twisted into a mocking smile. "You thought you could save us," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "But you have only doomed yourself." The chamber began to shake, the walls cracking and crumbling as an unearthly wail filled the air. Price felt a searing pain in his chest, as if his very soul were being torn apart. The darkness around him grew thicker, swallowing the light and the air, suffocating him. As his vision blurred and his consciousness began to fade, Price saw a new figure emerge from the shadows, a tall, hooded figure with eyes that burned like embers. The figure raised a skeletal hand, and the room fell deathly silent. "You have meddled in forces beyond your understanding," the figure intoned. "Now you will join us in eternal torment." With a final, anguished cry, Price's world went black. His body was found the next morning by the caretaker, lifeless and cold, with an expression of sheer terror frozen on his face. The book he had been reading lay open beside him, its pages blank and unmarked. Raynham Hall stood silent and empty once more, its secrets buried deeper than ever. The spirits of Sir Edward and Lady Eleanor continued to haunt its halls, their torment now shared by the man who had tried to free them. And in the deepest, darkest corners of the estate, the malevolent force that had claimed Price's soul watched and waited, ready to ensnare any who dared to uncover the dark history of Raynham Hall. The haunting was far from over. It had only just begun.